Good evening. When it was announced a decade ago, the HS2 rail line was billed as London's revolutionary gateway to the north. Not all of Westminster agreed. There were arguments over costs, the environmental impact and even the destination. Fast forward to now, and you've guessed it, they're still arguing. Rising costs and delays have led Boris Johnson to order a review into the project, casting doubt over whether it will ever be built. The house at Jews Farm has stood here for more than 400 years, but not for much longer.
It's coming from over there, right, and it's coming through here and across here.
Roy Ryle's family home is in the way of HS2. The land at Harefield on the edge of West London is needed for a viaduct.
It doesn't seem possible that somebody can walk into your life and say, I'm taking your business away from you and I'm taking your home away from you. Oh, well, where am I going to set up a business? Well, you've got to sort that out.
All around the Ryles, land has been bought up and is being prepared for the start of construction. But it's by no means certain the high-speed line from London to Birmingham will go ahead. Boris Johnson has ordered a review amid spiralling costs. HS2 supporters are anxiously awaiting the outcome.
This project benefits London as much as it does other cities around the UK. So the redevelopment at Euston is going to be transformational. It's going to add huge capacity, enable people to travel in and out of London, get freight off of our roads and onto rail. So there's benefits all round.
HS2 was supposed to cost £56 billion, but that's been revised upwards to £88 billion. Even though construction hasn't started, £8 billion has already been spent. Some of that has gone on buying property and compensating landowners, like here at Euston, where homes are being demolished. HS2's critics include Lord Tony Berkeley, who co-chaired the government's review and then disagreed with the as-yet unpublished conclusion.
I was shown a draft report which recommended that the project should go ahead, and I said, well, there's no evidence to support that. I don't agree. The cost benefit was very bad. You're only going to get 60p back on every pound the government invested.
For 7 years, the Ryles have been resisting attempts to get them to give up their family home.
Don't want the money. I want what I've got now. It's just that simple. I don't want to leave the place. I don't want people wandering around in here. It's taken me 10 years to restore this building.
The Ryles are currently on 6 weeks' notice to move out or face eviction. Previous deadlines have come and gone, and the family is pinning its hopes on the government cancelling HS2. Joining me now is former Transport Secretary Lord Adonis, who sits on the Labour benches in the House of Lords, and the Green Party Deputy Leader Amelia Womack, who has fought council, parliamentary and European elections in London over the years. Welcome, both of you. Andrew, HS2's your baby, really. Are you worried it's going to be killed off?
I don't think that Boris Johnson will cancel it. As we just heard in the report, the review that he has commissioned actually recommends it continues. The reason why Lord Berkeley said what he said is that it was a dissenting and minority report. And the reason why it will continue isn't just because £8 billion has been spent, and obviously it would be completely wasted money if that were to happen. It's been spent on buying the land and the buildings necessary, and of course we hugely regret the inconvenience that's been caused, but I'm afraid that's always necessary when you do big infrastructure. But it's because the benefits are still overwhelming. We need more transport capacity between our largest cities, London, Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds, because we're green. We don't want more motorways, we don't want more aviation. Rail is the way to do green travel in the modern age, and obviously the right thing to do is to build a modern line, which is a high-speed line.
Amelia, you'd agree with the last bit about rail being the green way forward.
Absolutely.
Why on earth are the Greens opposed to HS2 when it gets people out of cars and planes?
So we're not against high-speed rail, we're against this project that cuts through the countryside and its rural communities that get the impact of this. It's destroying unique
habitats. Well, wherever
habitats.
you put it, it's going to cut through communities. Wherever you put it, it's going to involve cutting down trees and ploughing up fields.
But what it is cutting through is ancient woodlands, is habitats. And in terms of the alternatives, we need to be upgrading our railway network. We've got, in terms of electrification across the country, we're down there with Croatia in terms of the amount that we've actually got done. There are other projects rather than these big white elephant projects that we can invest our money in and would be better spent.
Do you agree that there is a need for a high-speed railway line, or at least a new commuter line, passenger line between London and the North and the Midlands?
I think we need to think about who this benefits, and we mentioned about flying and cars. Actually, nearly 60% of people who are said to will use HS2 say that they would use other forms of railways or even the current lines to get around. So in terms of what we could be doing, in terms of what this project does, is it takes away from the fact that we're not actually genuinely making that shift change in our society. And I think that when you look at these big infrastructure projects, it also takes away from what we can do in terms of local transport
Andrew,
with the billions of pounds. That
you and Amelia agree on many things. What's the problem here? Why can't you come together?
I agree with a lot of what Amelia's just said. I agree with her. We need rail electrification. We need greener trains. We need to remove diesel trains. I started the electrification of the Great Western Main Line going out of Paddington. I agree with her. We need good local services. I also agree with her that a lot of the people who use high-speed rail would want to use rail anyway. But this comes to the key point. Over the next 50, 60 years, and we have to plan for the future, we need more rail capacity, or else people aren't going to be able to get on the trains. And that's not just intercity trains, it's also commuter trains. We need people to be able to commute into the cities. And one of the main benefits of high-speed rail is not just that it accelerates and provides more capacity for intercity trains, but it frees up capacity on the existing lines, both to have more rail freight and to have more commuter services.
Isn't the problem with it, though, the specification? It's too high. The railway's too fast. It's over-engineered. You could get the costs down and still have the benefits.
If you're going to build a railway, you should build a modern railway. Every other big European and Asian country has built high-speed lines, and they've built it to these specifications.
This isn't a modern railway. This is a vision of the 1980s. And when you look at France and other countries that have had these projects, South Korea is for an example, you see that what it does is build the wealth back into the capital rather than actually benefiting other sections of other cities and especially kind of rural communities.
Where would you build the railway?
And so I've already told you what I want to see is genuine investment into local transport. So I'd like to see more stations being opened up that have been closed down over the years, making sure that even things like the tramways that have been promised in South Wales get opened up. There are genuinely other opportunities about local transport infrastructure that we could spend that money on.
There's a need for both, isn't there, Andrew?
Politics is all about priorities.
Everything Amelia said I agree with, and it is possible to do both. It is possible to open lines that have been closed, which shouldn't have been closed under Beeching, which I agree with, but it's also possible to have state-of-the-art modern connections between our major cities. If we're going to be a successful country and a green country over the next generation, we need both. We need good local services, we also need good intercity services.
220 homes have been demolished in Euston, £8 billion spent. The government is committed to connectivity to the north and investing in the north. Do you think that HS2 is going to happen?
I hope it doesn't, and I think when we talk about green infrastructure, that isn't infrastructure that cuts through 108 ancient woodlands. It's not infrastructure that carves up nearly 700 wildlife habitats. It's not an infrastructure that puts barn owls, bats and other birds and insects at risk of...
Andrew, we hear reports that Andrew Gilligan, the Prime Minister's transport advisor, has been ringing Tory MPs suggesting that they don't back the first phase from London to Birmingham, that you have HS2, but from Birmingham to Manchester and Leeds. Do you worry that might happen? Or is that maybe an answer?
The Tory party is clearly split, as they are on a lot of these issues. There are some who don't want to spend the money at all. It's not the case. Let's be clear. If Andrew Gilligan and the Tory right wing succeed in this, it's not that it will go into other transport projects. It won't be spent at all, because that's what a lot of Tories believe in, not having investment in infrastructure. But it is also the case that there are lots of Tories who want this to proceed, and in particular the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, who's a former managing director of John Lewis. He knows how the economy works and all of that. He is passionately in support of this, as are most Tory MPs. When Parliament debated this and it had all of the evidence and it looked at the case for and the case against, including the points Amelia has made, it voted by 10-1 in favour of HS2, and that's why I believe it will proceed.
Amelia, Andrew, we should know the outcome of the review sometime in the next few weeks. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. Now, the general election provided plenty of shocks across the UK, but very few surprises in and around London. But that doesn't mean there aren't loads of new faces in Parliament. And for the first time, more than half of the new intake, representing seats in London and the home counties, are women.
Maiden speech, Claire Coutinho.
I'd like to begin by paying tribute to my predecessor, Sam Gyimah. We have more in common than representing East Surrey. We're both the children of immigrant doctors. I, too, am 5'4½".
It's a great pleasure to call to make her maiden speech. Daisy Cooper.
St Albans has more pubs per square mile than any other place in Great Britain, and they are steeped in our nation's history too.
Let's not head to St Albans.
You're very welcome.
Liberal Democrats would scrap all sentences for women apart from the most serious offences. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this creates double standards within the justice system?
Maiden speech, Fleur Anderson.
The current welfare state is failing families in my constituency. 1 in 3 children are in poverty. 30% of families in Roehampton are living in overcrowded homes, most of them hard-working families.
My constituency, the cities of London and Westminster, is home to Oxford Street, often referred to as the nation's high street. Given that local authorities rely heavily on business rate receipts to help encourage more investment into the high street, what plans does this government have to give councils greater fiscal powers to invest business rates locally?
What is my right honourable friend's department doing to provide a better deal for towns and high streets that have been overlooked and undervalued by Whitehall for far too long?
We cannot allow ourselves to become desensitised to the issue of knife crime. Young people in my constituency are being groomed for violence, and there's been an increase in fatal stabbings over the recent years.
What has the Minister done specifically to ensure that UK domestic flights are as friendly as possible to the environment?
Joining me now are 3 of those newly elected MPs from the Labour Party, the Vauxhall MP Florence Echelomi, for the Conservatives, the Kensington MP Felicity Buchan, and for the Liberal Democrats, the St Albans MP Daisy Cooper. Welcome all of you. Can I ask you, first impressions, how are you finding Parliament, Daisy? What's it like?
Well, Parliament's supposed to be there to serve the public, but I do think that there are so many old-fashioned, arcane systems and processes. You know, the jeering and the booing and turning around for prayers. I mean, there are some very outdated systems that happen in Parliament, and there's many things that are deeply inefficient as well. So, whilst it's great to be elected, and I'm looking forward to making my mark in Parliament like many other new MPs, it is deeply frustrating that it's still such an old-fashioned, out-of-date institution.
What do you think, Felicity? What struck you?
Well, I'm very honoured and humbled to be in Parliament. I've got one of the smallest majorities in the country after...
You got your work cut out.
After a very, very tough campaign. I guess one thing that struck me was that when you arrive, you are very self-employed. You start with no staff and no office, and you have got to go out and recruit and get your office. But it's a great...
Have you got one yet?
Well, I've seen my office. I haven't moved in yet, but it is a great experience. And we've got an enormous amount of flexibility as to how we spend our time, what sort of issues we focus on, whether we spend our time in the chamber, in select committees, with casework. So we really can make a difference.
Florence, have you seen your office? Got an email account yet?
No, so we've been issued laptops and we've all had iPads, which is good because when I then logged on, the amount of emails I'd received from constituents. So there are many constituents in Vauxhall facing a number of issues, and over Christmas they were emailing. So when I logged on for the first time, I saw this mountain of email, and I've just been focused on trying to deal with that backlog whilst working remotely without an office.
We saw some of your colleagues in the Commons just a moment ago wearing green and white striped lanyards around your necks. What does that do? So
it's to help staff and other MPs distinguish that we are all the new intake from 2019, which I think is really important because there's been a big turn and big new number of new MPs. I think on the Conservative side over...
We've got 107 new MPs.
We've got 26 new MPs.
So anyone with the green striped lanyard, they know to look after you.
They're the newbies, yes.
Yeah. And forgive you when you get things wrong as well.
Yeah. I get lost. I have got lost.
You jokingly were engaged in a conversation earlier this week with Abina, the new MP for Thamesmead and Erith, about how you might need labels because people are confusing you.
Yes.
Explain a bit more.
I think obviously it's fantastic to see such a diverse Parliament as well, but the reality is there's still a lot more to do. You know, you look at when Diane Abbott was elected in 1986, and now we have a much more diverse side, and I'm proud that it's the Labour bench which is diverse, but the fact that it was another MP that confused me for a black female colleague, which, you know, was a little bit disappointed, so we tweeted about it in jest, but it goes to the heart of the issue of why we must make sure we have more women and more diverse parliament.
Is that something that you've noticed, that there are more women, and it
Certainly.
must feel good?
Yeah, I mean, in the Liberal Democrats, I'm really pleased that more than half of our MPs are women. So we're a female-dominated parliamentary party. And it is good to see more women in the House of Commons. I think particularly for new female MPs, increasingly what I'm finding is female MPs are female first and party politicians second. So I think already we're having conversations about the kind of things that we can work on together and tackling issues that we're all concerned about. So I hope that I believe in cross-party working. I don't think that any political party has a monopoly on good ideas or good people, and I think that cross-party working does often start with female MPs.
And when we first arrived in Parliament, we had a photograph done of all the new female MPs, and there were lots of us. We covered both sides of the benches and in the middle.
Let's talk about some of the issues. Of course, Felicity, you're the MP for Grenfell. That's going to be a big story for you and for the people of Grenfell and the community in the coming months and years.
Oh, there's no question about that. And Grenfell and all of the associated issues, whether it's building reforms, fire safety regulations, indeed social housing as a whole, will be at the forefront of my attention. And actually in the business of the House, it was announced today that we will have a debate on Tuesday on the Grenfell first phase.
Have you
of
had
the
much
inquiry.
engagement with the communities?
Yes, I have, and it's going to be a process of meeting everyone and gaining mutual trust, but I will be looking to catch the Speaker's eye in that debate.
Did you get a sense yet of what people around Grenfell want to happen to the tower itself?
Well, there is now a commission which will look into all of the possibilities, and that commission will report back.
Florence, we heard you talk in the Commons today in your maiden speech about knife crime, something that everyone in London knows all about. But you also had a particular personal experience which you told your fellow MPs about. Let's have a listen to that.
Last week, Tuesday, I was one of the first people on scene following a stabbing incident which took place just over the border of my constituency. As I made that frantic phone call to the emergency services, I and two other members of the public, trying to stem the flow of blood from the young boy who'd been stabbed. I later found out that young boy was 15 years old. I was scared. I was sad, because some members of the public walked past.
Florence, that's pretty shocking.
It's such a big issue for us in London, and one of the things that I've been doing, working with a number of colleagues, including Conservative colleagues and Lib Dem colleagues, we have to make sure the issue of knife crime is not politicised. We have to make sure that we are getting funding in the right areas to support our young people, and some of those areas include access to proper housing, looking at the big issue of school exclusions across a number of London schools, looking at the fact that I'm not saying that the police on every street corner will solve it, but we have seen an increase in police numbers.
Isn't it too late
London.
to stop it being politicised?
I don't think it is too late, because we have to remember that these are young people, they're children. That should move all of us to say, what more could we all be doing as people making the decisions in Parliament to address this?
But surely it's going to be a big issue in the mayoral election. Sadiq Khan's going to be held to account as being the mayor at the time of this rising knife crime. The Conservatives are certainly going to have a go at him. I'm sure the Lib Dems will as well.
I think crime has got to be one of our biggest focuses. We had 149 murders in London last year. There was a murder in December in the ward that I actually live in. I personally think that Sadiq can be doing more on crime.
But he can't do more unless your government give him the funding.
Well, we
haven't had the funding in the right places, and I'm hoping you'll work with me and other London MPs to make sure we get the funding we need to properly address this.
It's a big issue as well in St Albans, where we suffer from the county lines issue, and just as there's been a huge growth in knife crime in London, that has spread to St Albans and the surrounding areas as well, and the rise in that crime has been so fast that we do need urgent solutions. I think one of the interesting things about our mayoral candidate Siobhan Benita is that she is an expert on tackling youth knife crime. She's been on a commission, been looking at this. She's been advocating for a public health approach to it, as well as more investment in community policing and youth services. And I agree, quite frankly, with Florence. We need to see a lot more investment from the government.
But just
and more action here in London
coming
as well.
back to Florence's point, I do think that Sadiq Khan can be doing more. He's almost doubled his PR budget, and it's come out today that staffing costs under Sadiq have increased by 82%. So I think that he needs more officers on the beat, and those additional costs actually equate to 1,400 more police officers.
The 1,400 police officers which your government have cut over the last 10 years. So it's great that, you know, the Prime Minister was banding this figure of 20,000 new police officers. It takes 9 months to train a Metropolitan Police officer. We can't wait that long. The figure's been quoted for London is around 5,000. We need a lot more. So it's not that we're getting more police officers, we're just making a shortfall of the officers we've lost over the last few years.
But Sadiq Khan could be managing his own budget and focusing on the #1 issue in the capital, which is crime. Well,
and
he isn't when
by
staffing costs are going up to 82%.
By funding youth
and doubling
services,
the PR
which
budget.
isn't the mayor's responsibility, but he recognises that making sure our young people have positive activities, a 45 million Young Londoners Fund has helped.
What I think we should say is that of all the issues that are facing this government, you could fail on all sorts of different issues. When it comes to knife crime, it is literally life and death. And
As
this
you
is,
saw.
This is the one area where the government has really got to step up and step up quickly, because we need action by this government in days and weeks, not months and
And
years.
that is why we are hiring 20,000 more police officers and making crime one of the central issues for this government.
Felicity, Florence, Daisy, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from you, but for the moment we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed. So thank you to all my guests tonight, to Andrew, Amelia, Florence, Felicity and Daisy. I'll be back next month when, if the Prime Minister has his way, we'll have left the European Union. Until then, thank you for watching and good night from Westminster.